My name is Bismarck Lepe. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Wizeline. When you're starting a company, I think that the best employees are entrepreneurs. And the reason for that is entrepreneurs are self-driven. They'll work very, very hard. They are creative, and they're there to learn because their ultimate goal is to go out and start their own company. And so they're very focused on becoming a sponge and taking in and building their own network, which ultimately benefits a technology company. And so one of the questions I typically ask in the early stages of a business is, if I gave you $15 million, what company would you go and start? And then walk through that process. And it doesn't matter if it's someone in finance, if it's someone in the engineering team, product marketing. I always ask those questions because in the early stages, I want the entrepreneurs. But in order to make a startup successful, you have to put in the 20 hours, 7 days a week. You need to work your 72 hours straight to get a product out in market. And that is not normal here, right? Because most people in Latin America have jobs. And they have jobs with very little upward mobility because most of these businesses, especially large businesses, are family owned. So if your last name isn't the name that's on the building, why are you going to work really, really hard when the output or the outcome or how you're going to benefit is disproportionately low to the time and that you're going to put into the business? And so that was one of the cultural aspects that we needed to not teach but show. So every Wizeline employee around the world has stock options. And so everybody is an owner. We give breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We give off-cycle promotions. So the person that works harder and contributes more is going to grow in their career much, much faster than someone who is doing a really good job but isn't putting in the 7 days a week, 20-hour days. And so it really gives people ownership of not just the company, but their own career. And showing the team that has been a process. But that has allowed us to start to build the right type of culture where you have people who are self-driven. So early on, when I would interview people, I would tell them, give me 2 years. And once I would actually figure out that they want to be an entrepreneur, I would tell them, look, give me 2 years. We will give you incredible access to the articles of incorporation, how we distribute equity, if you can attend board meetings. And so that level of access and the types of people we attracted also meant that we've created an alumni network for my first company that has actually been pretty successful. And so that company ended up hiring about 650 people. Of the 650 people, 50 left to start 30 companies. 20 raised, at this point, over $150 million in venture capital. At this point has already returned, that group have already returned over $300 million in investments, so 2x, but combined, because most of these companies are still private, combined are worth over $1 billion. And these are companies like Liftoff, like Parse, like Quesky in Latin America, Bayonet in Mexico City. And in terms of economic impact, and something that I'm really proud of, is this group of Uyala alumni have already created over 600 jobs in Mexico that pay over $40,000 a year. And I think that that's also one of the problems with entrepreneurship in Latin America, that in Latin America, most of the countries have been run by very large monopolies, right? And there's a certain level of hierarchy and responsibility that individuals have. And you're not allowed to move too far to the right or too far to the left from what your job is. But at startups, there's so much to do that everybody's given a lot of opportunities and visibility into the problems that these companies have. And so I think startups beget startups. And I think that the best startup founders are founders who have worked at startups, who have gone through the trials and tribulations of building a company. So for my first company, all three of us were engineers. I wasn't a very good engineer, so I didn't really cut code. I was told not to cut code because they're like, we want this to work. So go do that, was what I was told. But my younger brother and my co-founder, both engineers at Google. Sean Knapp was a very senior engineer at Google, and so he was the CTO. And my brother was an engineering director. And so we started with a strong technical team, and we were able to attract a strong technical team. At Wizeline, the new company where we are a product and services company focused on product development, I don't have co-founders, but I started with a founding team. And the founding team all came out of Uyala. They're all technical, which meant that on day one, we had a team of 5 that were very technical, very product-centric, very UX-centric, and they were able to attract a very strong technical team overnight. In a business, especially a business of this size, you need many different types of people. I like to say that Google was successful in the early days because there were a bunch of Che Guevaras running around, a bunch of revolutionaries. But eventually, once you get to a certain size, you need to establish a governance structure that's going to be sustainable and it's going to grow. But again, in the early days, I think you want revolutionaries. I think you want people who are passionate about what you're doing. Eventually, you need some level of stability within the organization. Like finance, you don't want a bunch of renegades in the finance department. You don't want a bunch of renegades in the people operations department. There are certain areas where you want level of stability, but it takes time. At this point, there are these roles where you don't need the hard chargers that are going to be working 7 days a week, because if someone in people operations is working 7 days a week, you've understaffed them, or there's something seriously wrong in your business. As the company gets bigger, we start hiring for more specialized roles, and there it's much easier to ask certain things about their experience and how they've dealt with problems. Again, when you're starting out in a business, you're looking for generalists, and I think that that's why it's really more getting to the core of the individual than what do they know, because especially if you're hiring someone really young, it's very likely that in the first year at your company, they're going to learn more than they've learned in any prior experience. But once you get bigger and you're hiring a CFO, to be a CFO, you need to understand how an audit process works, how they're going to hire people, how they're going to organize their teams. What do they ask when they're interviewing? And so then it becomes a lot more specialized. At each phase, you need a certain type of person. And there are some people who can evolve through the phases and do very well. And there are other people that are just really good at one particular phase. And so one of the topics that we've discussed often is, how do you hire and fire? For people who have the capability to move between phases, how do you grow them? How do you invest in them? And so that's obviously a very difficult topic for most entrepreneurs, because how do you fire someone that has been in the trenches with you, working 20-hour days and has helped you build up the business, but isn't quite ready to move into the next phase? I am very proud of Wizeline, not just because it's been a successful customer or company with great customers, but we're investing in the local community, in the communities that we're in. So in Mexico, we hold free academies to teach UX, to teach technical writing, to teach different languages. We have a high school program to make sure that there are more, and in the most recent generation of this high school program, we made sure that 50% of the students were women to make sure that we get more women into STEM. And I think that this idea of doing well and doing good is a great way to inspire people, because it's not, again, just about the products that they're building on a day-to-day basis. It's not just about their paycheck, but it's about leaving an impact and making an impact on their society. You need to communicate tremendously. Like every single day, you need to make sure that everybody has the data they need to make the right decisions. So the good, bad, or ugly needs to be communicated to the team. I think you need to show that the people who work harder are going to be the ones that are going to be promoted. And so people who are working really, really hard, make sure that they're the ones that are disproportionately benefiting from the success of the business. And I think as people see that it's not this 2-year cycle to move to the next level, the ones who really want to work hard and contribute are going to start to float to the top.